Welcome all to Max's Mic. I'm Max and I have the mic. In today's episode, I will be providing my predictions for the conference championship games for all of the teams currently ranked in the top 25 of Division One college football. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we get started in the Sun Belt division with Troy taking on James Madison. James Madison, the Dukes, 25th ranked there, currently 23.5 point favorites, and I'm going to be picking them to win this one. Going to get through this real quick. JMU is 11-1, their only loss being a 28-14 loss to Louisville in week 2 of the season. The Dukes in that game, their defense played quite well and has been throughout the season. In that game against Louisville, only 264 yards of offense allowed, 3 sacks, 8 TFLs, 4 passes defended, and a turnover via a fumble by Miller Moss. Their quarterback, JMU, that is, Alonzo Barrett III, he's a dual threat QB. 2,440 passing yards on a 61% completion percentage is solid. 20 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's quite exceptional. And he can also run the ball, running 459 yards so far this season and 13 touchdowns. The Duke's defense, they've been playing really well as well. 28 sacks on the season. But what's really incredible is the average points that they've been allowing, which is 16. Only 16 points. Their offense averaging 37.8. Both stats ranking JMU within the top 10 out of all of college football teams in D1 throughout the nation. I expect a big game from JMU, and JMU currently playing for their lives and their shot at making the college football playoff. And I believe that a big game today should warrant them the opportunity and the chance to go out and compete in a college football playoff game. And I'm going to get into my thoughts on that a little bit later, but I do expect JMU to cover this 23.5 point spread. Troy, a decent school, 8-5 record, but I don't expect them to really be much of a competition to JMU. And if JMU can walk right through Troy, win the Sun Belt, and finish the season 12-1, I think they've got a genuine argument for why they should get in. And again, I'm going to talk about all these college football playoff scenarios a little bit later in the show. But for now, let's move on to the American. 24th ranked North Texas taking on 20th ranked Tulane. North Texas 11-1 compared to Tulane 10-2. So why is Tulane the higher ranked? Well, first of all, North Texas, their only loss was to USF, who back when that game happened, week 4 of the season, I believe it was, USF seemed like they were going to win the American, be no doubt guaranteed to make it into the college football playoff. And then USF lost to both Memphis and Navy, didn't even make the American Championship. On the other hand, Tulane, their losses, one was to UTSA, but that one doesn't really count. Their other one was Ole Miss. On the other hand, teams they defeated, Duke and Northwestern by significant margins, something that North Texas doesn't have on their schedule. Tulane has definitely played better competition. And so because of that, the numbers are going to be skewed slightly. North Texas, though, their offense has been dominant, first in all of college football. They're also first in total touchdowns scored by their offense, and they're second in college football in both passing yards per game and average yards per play. But again, Tulane, their numbers skewed a little bit and not stacking up as much as North Texas is due to the strength of competition. On the other hand, let's get into Tulane and their quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, who I believe is quite a solid quarterback. The BYU transfer has thrown for 2,717 yards, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. And last year, he nearly led BYU to the college football playoff, and not for a loss at the end of the season to Arizona State. And now with Tulane has a chance to bring them to the playoff with a win in this game. So I'm going to be going with Tulane. I think that quite simply they are the better team. They've played a lot better competition, and so they are better versed and they are more prepared and battle tested than North Texas is. And so that's why I'm going with Tulane. But this should be a great game. Now, I want to talk about this game with a little bias. Let's bring in my bias into this one. And it has relevancy to the topic of the game. And it's because I want Tulane to win. I want them to win. Now, this doesn't affect why I picked them to win, but I want them to win. Simply because of the storyline that takes place with Jake Retzlaff. Again, I brought up that he was a transfer from BYU last year, 2,947 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He ran for 561 yards and 14 touchdowns. Again, nearly leading to BYU to a championship. So why is he and how has he ended up transferring in at Tulane? Well, it has a lot to do with the kind of school BYU is. BYU is a Mormon school, a religious school, with some religious beliefs and identity that they put upon their primarily almost all entirely Mormon students. Well, Jake Retzlaff got caught doing something that violates those standards, and so because of that, he's now been forced to transfer. What is that he did? Well, he had premarital sex. And so because of that, he's now at Tulane and has the chance to bring Tulane. And there's a good chance that Tulane's in and Jake Retzlaff's in the college football playoff and BYU isn't. And I believe that BYU would have been in the college football playoff had they still had Jake Retzlaff. But of course, morals, stick to your morals. You don't make exceptions for your quarterback, sets a standard and identity for your school. No one is above the rules. And BYU's now got this guy, Bear Bachmeier, who's playing pretty well. I'm going to get into him a little bit later in the show, but yeah, so that's my take. Really would end up being quite a funny story. And another funny story that could possibly happen is going on in the ACC, my next conference I'm going to talk about. The ACC championship somehow, due to archaic rules, consists of 17th ranked Virginia taking on unranked 5-loss Duke. Yes, you heard that right. 12th ranked Miami is not in the ACC championship game. No, it is Duke, who is 7-5, and it's not 9-3 Georgia Tech. It's not 8-4 Pitt. It's not 8-4 SMU. It's not 12th ranked 10-2 University of Miami Hurricanes, who are also the highest ranked team out of the ACC. No, it's 17th ranked Virginia, and it's unranked 5-loss Duke. And if Duke somehow manages to win this game, which can happen, they do have a shot to win this game. And if it happens, there's no possible way that an ACC team makes the college football playoff. I don't believe it. I can't imagine it. And Duke right now, they're hot. Winning their last 2 games by a combined point differential of 24. Duke could run the tables and go and win. And I mean, when you look at Virginia, they're 10-2, but they lost to Wake Forest 3 weeks ago. That's a baseball school. Needed overtime to beat UNC at UNC. 2 overtimes to beat FSU. An overtime to beat Louisville. They lost earlier in the season to NC State, 35-31. So clearly Virginia seems to struggle against North Carolina schools. They can't close the game out, and Duke's going to have a shot. Okay, now I'm going to get legit. Duke doesn't have a chance. I believe that Virginia is going to go in. They're going to steamroll. And if they steamroll, they're going to leave no doubt that they deserve to be in the college football playoff. They had already beaten Duke. They had already crushed Duke. They already clobbered Duke 34-17, putting up 540 yards of offense, holding Duke to 42 rushing yards, 255 total yards of offense. They had 35 minutes time on possession, Virginia did. I have no reason to believe that Virginia should not crush Duke. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what happens if they don't crush Duke and some other of my thoughts on this game a little bit later because it has relation to JMU as I talked about earlier. But again, for now, my prediction is I'm going to be taking Virginia. Next, the Big 12, BYU, 11th ranked BYU versus 4th ranked Texas Tech. Texas Tech, 11-1. Their loss was to Arizona State, but that was also when they had their second string quarterback. It was much earlier in the season, and they've been dominant and running away with games ever since. The return of the starter coming back to play, including 42-0 win over Oklahoma, 43-20. Excuse me, not Oklahoma State, not Oklahoma University, Oklahoma State. 43-20 win over Kansas, 48-9 over UCF, and then the season against West Virginia, and they win 49-0. BYU, on the other hand, their loss 29-7 to Texas Tech. And again, while BYU had more time of possession in that game, Texas Tech really ran the table and dominated that one. Final score is 29-7. Those 7 points from BYU came in the fourth quarter. And so while this game will be at a neutral site compared to the regular season game, I believe that Texas Tech is going to just simply go ahead and win this. They're third in points, offensive points per game. They're also first in defensive on the defensive side in rushing yards allowed, which is only 68.9. Incredible. They're also third in all of college football in defensive points allowed per game with 11.3. Their defense has been playing incredibly well offensively. They've been able to move the ball well. On the other hand, BYU, they have some, we'll call it middle of the range, even though they're quite higher up in the pack. But when it comes to the top teams, when you're looking at top 25, they're a mid top 25 team, which is kind of where they are ranked right now at 11 and right around where I believe they will be at the end of the season after this loss. Bear Bachmeier brought him up, the BYU quarterback, wearing number 47, astonishingly, 2,500, nearly 2,600 passing yards, 14 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He's been playing quite well, but on the other side, for Texas Tech, Baron Morton, 2,400 passing yards, 20 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But again, this is a Texas Tech team that also has a really nice run game to them. 193 rushing yards produced per game by their offense, nearly 200. Really good numbers. So I'm going to be going with Texas Tech. Now let's get over to Saturday. Or excuse me, this was already Saturday, but let's get into the big games. First, we've got the SEC game, and all things are normal. Thank heavens that with all the chaos that is going on and been going on over the last few years, at least we get some normalcy in the SEC. We get Georgia and we get Alabama. This game is going to be an exciting one, as all Georgia-Alabama games are. You've got Georgia with Gunnar Stockton, who's been playing relatively well this season. 70% completion percentage, 2,500 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But it just seems like with Georgia, every time their offense has been playing, every time their offense, has been playing playing well, the defense is only playing good enough to get them the win. And then when their defense is playing well, the offense is only playing just good enough to get them the win. You look at games, you got games where the defense is going off. They hold Georgia Tech to 9 points, but the offense only scored 16. You look at the Florida game where the defense, again, 20 points, the offense only scored 24. Ole Miss, the defense struggled 35, but the offense was clicking for 43. You got other games. Tennessee, the offense was going off, firing on all cylinders, 44 points. The defense, they allowed 41, though, and it was a game that went to overtime. So it's kind of this little tug of war in which it doesn't seem like Georgia can really get. I really feel like there was only one game so far this season where both offense and defense were clicking for the entirety, full 4 quarters. And that was the Texas game when they won 35-10. I understand and I know that 21 points from Georgia came in that 4th quarter, but I really feel like offensively, defensively, they're kind of running the table, doing quite well. They weren't able to get the ball in the end zone, but we're still playing quite well. On the other hand, for Alabama, their quarterback, Ty Simpson, 3,000 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 66% completion percentage. He's playing well, except for the last couple of games. You look at his last 2 games, and here are his numbers. He's 30 of 51 for 269 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. If that all took place in one game, which, first of all, 30 completions and 51 attempts is a lot for one game. But let's just say in a world where that happened in one game, that's not a good stat line. It's really you maybe win that game, but you win because you're Alabama and you have a great defense. But that's not a stat line for one game that's going to win. Now, think about it in the fact that was 2 games. And they were games against Eastern Illinois and Auburn. And the 2 interceptions and 0 of the passing touchdowns came against Eastern Illinois. Not good. Ty Simpson, a really bright-minded quarterback who has a chance to be drafted quite highly in this NFL draft and turn into a solid quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a standout stud, but I do think that he could turn into a solid average quarterback that can get a team to a playoff and potentially even win it. Like a Matthew Stafford kind of guy who's really not a standout stud in terms of, I guess, the modern quarterback of a guy who can really scramble well, who's going to go, you got to deal with the dual threat. He's not really a dual threat kind of guy. He can run a little bit. He's been running a little bit more lately, but he can throw the ball quite well, has a nice arm, but his mind, his understanding, his ability to read a defense, find the open receiver, and make the right reads is something that's really crucial that not a lot of guys have, that a lot of guys have to learn and pick up. And so having that at a college, really good. And so I'm going to go with Alabama, but I'm also going to go with Alabama because of the way that their defense has just been playing. I really like Alabama's defense, and so I'm going to be going with Alabama to win it. Now, our final game, the Big Ten Championship, also can be referred to as the College Football National Championship game, even though it technically isn't, but it technically is because it is between number 2 Indiana and number 1 Ohio State. Ohio State first ranked simply just because they won the national championship last year and they haven't lost since they played Michigan last year. And I understand that they did just beat Michigan, but let's be quite frank. I do believe that Ohio State should run the tables against Michigan, especially a Michigan team who their defense is nowhere near the same level that it was last year, and a Michigan team whose quarterback play is relatively the same. Offensive line was maybe slightly improved from last year, but not by much. The running backs were about the same as last year, so let's be real, this Ohio State team should have and did run the tables with Michigan. And this is the kind of game that we should have seen last year. Simply straight up, this is the kind of game we should have seen last year. Anyways, let's get to this one between Indiana and Ohio State. And Ohio State are currently, I believe, I'm going to double check, but I believe they are the favorites. And I'm going to be quite honest, I'm picking Indiana. And Ohio State favored by 4 points. And I'm going to be straight up. I'm picking Indiana because I believe that Indiana has built a Michigan team. I'm going to be straight up with it. When we look at this team, Indiana, they are doing quite well. Ohio State, definitely the number one defense, but Indiana's got to be the number two defense. But Indiana is also one of the best offenses with Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback, who's leading all of college football with 32 passing touchdowns on only 5 interceptions, 72% completion percentage for 2,700 passing yards. He's been playing incredibly well. And again, this Indiana defense, you look at Ohio State, great, they're first in a lot of numbers, but Indiana, they're second in offensive points allowed per game with 10.9. They're second in rushing yards allowed per game, which Ohio State really doesn't have much of a run game anyway. So the elimination completely of Ohio State's run game. I feel like I remember a team that did that last year. The Indiana's also allowed the second fewest touchdowns in all of college football. Excuse me. Yes. The second fewest touchdowns in all college football, with Ohio State being the only one ahead of them. Ohio State allowed 9, Indiana 12, and it's Oklahoma at 16 right after that. But again, Ohio State has a great defense, but Indiana also has an incredible defense. With the 34 sacks they've been able to rack up, they've been able to get to the quarterback, bring pressure, and do everything phenomenally well. And when you look over at Ohio State, yeah, they've got all the defensive numbers, but they don't have the offensive numbers like Indiana has. Second in all of college football in points per game with 44.3. Second in most in total touchdowns scored. They're ninth in rushing yards. They've built kind of like a Michigan team. Indiana and Oregon are both kind of building after Michigan. And what is Michigan built? It's pure Big Ten football, which is hard-nosed running the ball, because typically Big Ten, those are two schools up north where it is a lot easier to run the ball and it's not easy to pass due to the unfortunate and the inclement weather. That is why you see a difference between Big Ten and SEC football. Ohio State plays more SEC football, pass focused with the ability to run the ball. Big Ten, again, because of the north, being up north, because of the rain, the snow, the especially the snow, and the inability to really throw a football in a lot of these weather conditions, they're more geared up for a run-focused style of football. And so because of that, and because of the fact that I think Indiana is going to be able to run the ball against Ohio State, because, I mean, Michigan proved that, and I think if Indiana can run the ball, they can throw the ball, and they can move the ball, and I definitely like Indiana's defense versus Indiana's offense versus Ohio State's defense a lot better than I like Ohio State's offensive chances against Indiana's defense. I think Indiana is going to go and win this game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, but I think it's going to be a dogfight, and I think Indiana is going to pull it out. Curt Cignetti's got that dog inside of him, and I think he's going to go and lead this Indiana team to a championship. So give me the Hoosiers. Now I'm going to get into the college football playoff. I know I hinted at this. I'm going to run through real quick my picks, and then I'm going to get into what I was kind of alluding to a little earlier. I'm picking JMU to win the Sun Belt. I'm picking Tulane. Give me Virginia. Give me Texas Tech, Alabama, and then Indiana. And finally, the last little bit is that currently right now, Virginia is in because of the fact that the top 5 ranked conference winners get into the college football playoff. And that last year it was like the highest 4 ranking got automatic buys. Not anymore. It's just simply the top 5 ranking. And so as of right now, that'd be from the Big Ten, be from the SEC, it'd be from the Big 12, it'd be from the ACC, and then it would be from the American. From the American. However, when you look at things and you compare things up, if JMU comes up with a big win and Virginia struggles against Duke, I see no reason why JMU shouldn't have the chance to get in over Virginia. In games against similar opponents, both Virginia and JMU defeated Coastal Carolina, but Virginia won 48-7, whereas JMU won that game 59-10. When you look at JMU, they beat Washington State 24-20, whereas Virginia won 22-20. JMU did lose to Louisville 28-14, but Virginia won 30-27. But that game was in overtime. At the end of regulation, it was 24-24. So Virginia scored more points, but they also gave up more points than JMU. Virginia had also in that game put up 237 yards of offense, including overtime, and allowed 383 yards. JMU, 263 yards of offense and 264. And all these numbers remain the same against all other games in which these teams had equal opponents. So besides this one game where Virginia ended up coming out on top versus JMU, all other matchups against similar opponents, JMU was the better team. JMU put up better numbers, and they just simply played better. And these matchups, barring the Louisville game, similar matchups between these two teams, barring the Louisville game, were against weaker opponents than Virginia really is normal and used to facing in the ACC. And so again, I think that JMU should have a chance and be considered to have a chance to make it, even if Virginia still wins. If Virginia wins, but this game goes to overtime and it's a 24-21 Virginia victory in overtime or in triple overtime or something, they go on the distance and they put up hardly any points, if Virginia's offense is lacking or their defense is horrible and their offense is barely able to keep scoring past Duke, who in any case, Duke is not really that good of a team. And Virginia already proved that they can kind of run the table. So if Duke suddenly comes out of nowhere and finds a way to win this game, or not win this game, but put up a real fight, I just simply think that JMU should be considered in. And the reason, and further reason why I think JMU should have a consideration, and honestly why I think that just JMU should get in, is to force the ACC to fix their archaic rules for deciding tiebreakers, because there is no possible world or reason why 7-5 Duke should be in the ACC championship game over 12th ranked 10-2 UMiami. I don't care that they have the same amount of losses. I don't care that whatever down the ranking listing of whatever tiebreaker they have in order to get there. Realistically, the next tiebreaker after conference record should be your record overall. I really think that that's how it should work, which in case Miami has the much better record. And it's not even like Miami played a lot of easier opponents than Duke. But in any case, I digress. I just wanted to add that at the end of this video, that I think that the whole college football playoff is completely skewed. My solution would be a relegation system where all the top 25, or excuse me, the top 15 are in Tier A, and then there's Tier B. And then at the end of the season, the top 8 schools in the Tier A will go on to the playoffs, and the bottom, 4 will then be relegated down to the lower, and the lower will get moved up. You have like a European soccer kind of relegation system. I think that's the best way to fix it, because then you've got the programs that are on runs that are playing well are going to continue to climb up, and the programs that aren't continue to go down. Or a more realistic, simple fix is to get rid of these lame games in which we've got schools like Ohio State playing Grumbling, and we get Indiana taking on Kent State and Old Dominion. Let's just get rid of that. And instead of those games, Indiana should be playing Georgia and Alabama, and Ohio State should be playing Texas and Alabama. And they did play Texas, but they shouldn't be playing Grambling. They should be, or Ohio. Excuse me. I understand Ohio, but they shouldn't be playing Grambling. Like they should be playing against conference opponents. So those are my thoughts. Again, I'll run it through one more time in case you missed it. But my prediction for the conference championships: JMU in the Sun Belt, Tulane out of the American, Virginia out of the ACC, Texas Tech out of the Big 12, Alabama out of the SEC, and Indiana out of the Big 10. If you did enjoy, check out my radio show on VIC Radio, www.vicradio.org. I got a show called Between the 20s. I'll be talking football. It'll be this Sunday morning from 8 to 9 a.m. And then later in the day, I will be going live here on Max's Mike YouTube before, during, and after the college football selection show, giving you some of my predictions and then reacting to the actual playoff bracket, as well as, again, further predictions of how I think everything will play out and shake out. So like and subscribe if you did enjoy. Get ready, a lot of content coming your way. And until then, enjoy the college football that is going to be going on tonight. Take care and goodbye.